Surinder Gupta says, why does India have a very small number of diplomats? You mean the IFS, Indian Foreign Service, has approximately, I don't know what, 2,000 diplomats, roughly give or take 1,700 diplomats? And yeah, that's the way it has been. That's the way it has been since the Cold War, since the 20th century. And we are continuing that legacy. I mean, it makes sense to augment the number of diplomats we have. We need to have diplomatic missions everywhere in the world, wherever we have interests as a nation, national interests. uh, if you take the example of nations like the US, they would have in excess of 10,000 diplomats, maybe more than 20,000 diplomats. When it comes to China, they would have a diplomatic corps that has a strength in the vicinity of 10,000. Russia would be similar. Singapore is far ahead of India in the number of its diplomatic strength. For some reason, India continues to hold on to its Nehruvian legacy. It does make sense to induct a lot more diplomats, especially young people, especially people from various backgrounds, not necessarily people who have come through the UPSC course, the UPSC uh, route. Uh, you need diplomats who have specializations in various fields, not necessarily have gone through UPSC. You can obviously give them some training. You need people uh, whose core competence is science, it's physics, nuclear physics, chemistry, biotechnology. You need people whose core competence is history. Let's say the history of a certain nation or a certain region. Let's say German history, or let's say Appalachian history, or let's say the history of the Sahel region of Africa, or the history of China. You need to have people who have deep specializations in such things, in such domains, very disparate domains, and you need to bring them into the diplomatic corps. That's what a nation does in order to pursue its interests to the fullest extent, and India doesn't do that. So it's rather strange and curious that after 10 plus years of Mr. Modi being in power, we still are kind of in the same we still have the same situation. I don't know why it persists. I mean, is it so hard to effect reforms within the government? I don't know. So if you ask me, it beats me. I don't get it. We need to have more diplomats. Of course, you see, every ministry does engage in diplomatic activity. Okay, let's say you have the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Commerce. Okay, you do trade deals with various nations. There are trade negotiations going on with various nations across the world: Australia, the US, the EU, UK, whatnot. What are those negotiations? That's diplomacy. And the Indian Foreign Service won't be involved in that. The ministry officials will be involved in that. So that's also diplomacy. So actually, if you look at it that way, we have a much larger corpus of people who engage in active diplomacy. But the Indian Foreign Service, technically, if you just look at it from that perspective, is quite small. But we have all these ministries that have their own uh, individual outreach, diplomatic outreach, and diplomatic efforts and activities in various domains. That does happen, but it does make sense to induct a lot more people into the diplomatic corps. People from, like I said, lots of different diverse backgrounds who have specializations in things that would really, give teeth to our diplomatic activity. So that's the kind of thing that should happen, but we're not there right now.